You're listening to the Talking Headways Podcast Network.
Talking Mondays. Keep moving on. Keep moving on. Talking Mondays. Keep moving on. Keep moving on. Talking Mondays. Keep moving on.
Happy Monday. This is Mondays at the Overhead Wire, sponsored by our super generous Patreon supporters. I'm Jeff Wood, your host, and joined by, that's right, every Wookiee's favorite right-hand man is here to talk about the news. We're Han Solo today, but give a shout out and a big thank you to James Lamas, who joined us last episode. It was a great conversation and fun to have him on. We'll have more folks on hopefully soon. Maybe actually I'm gonna be out of town a bit over the next few months, so hopefully we'll get some Monday shows in. But there's some thinking that I'll get some more guests and get some more folks coming on the show to chat, which will be super fun. And as we do when we're Han Solo, we talk about some previous podcasts and the ones that are coming up on Talking Headways, which is hopefully a good idea for sharing what's coming up to you all. I'm super excited about what's coming up and what we've done so far this year. We're at 545 podcast episodes. We're getting closer to that 550, on our way to 600. Earlier, 2 weeks ago, I guess, we did the ETOD episode, Equitable TOD, with Emily Laflamme at CNT. That was a really good episode. They have a technical assistance program where they talk with developers and help them figure out how to do ETOD in Chicago. Last week, we had Colin Parent on to talk about his report with Circulate San Diego called The Powerless Brokers. And it was really good. It was really good to chat with Colin, and some really good discussions about post-approval permitting, pre-construction permitting, and how cities can kind of gum up the works there and keep projects from moving forward, and how we should really be giving transit agencies a little bit more power. And then coming up, I'm working on the Kingwood episodes, and I have a draft script. I can't believe I have a script to what we do. We're going to be working on that one and trying to put it together. I have the audio, I have a script written, and so I'm working on it. I have 4 guests that came on and did recordings for that over the last 3 or 4 years. And so finally, I think we're getting closer to the end, and hopefully in the next few months, we'll have that thing out. Still working on it, still got stuff to do, but hopefully it'll probably be actually a 2-parter, I'm guessing, because it's a little bit long. It's got some good interviews with folks, and we discuss a lot of really cool stuff. And if you want to get a preview of that, you can go to my Substack and read about Kingwood there. I did a little bit of a preview article, not article necessarily. It's an article. It was an intro to my newsletter, and I wrote something there. So if you want a little bit of a preview of what the Kingwood episode might be like, check that out. Daniel Wartell London will be on the show this Thursday. Actually, we're recording this Thursday, but he won't be on until later. The NACTO folks, Ryan Russo will be on this Thursday, and then Daniel will be on hopefully next week. We're going to talk with Daniel about his book, The Menace of Prosperity. The NACTO episode about the bike guide, we talk about all kinds of fun stuff, including the new ideas for bike lanes for bigger vehicles, for faster vehicles that interact with bicycles, the struggles that are happening with delivery systems and stuff like that. It's going to be a really fun and interesting episode. I hope folks listen into that one. Sam Sargent will be coming on the pod, former Caltrain, now a VTA man. We'll talk a lot about things, including hopefully Caltrain shipping off its oldest diesel trains to South America. We get some inside scoop on that. Former FHWA Deputy Secretary Andrew Rogers is scheduled to come on the show. We got him coming on to talk about what we're asking the feds to do in the next transportation bill in terms of safety on the roads. Adele Houghton and Carlos Castillo Salgado will be on to talk about their book, Architectural Epidemiology. I got to read that one. I have it. I posted the picture of it on my Blue Sky. Really excited to read that one. Ben Donsky will be on the show to talk about activating spaces under highways. So when you have that opportunity and, there's not going to be a tear down, there's not going to be a boulevard, there's other things that possibly can be happening there. And we can talk to him about a lot of those things, a lot of the issues that come up with designing those spaces. And after that, I'm going to plan a few surprises for folks. As I mentioned earlier, I'll probably be traveling in September and October a bunch. We'll probably be at Impact in Portland. I'm hoping and cross my fingers. So we'll see. Hopefully we'll see folks there. I'll probably do some episodes there as well. Also, a quick shout out to a new podcast on the circuit. Our friends David Zipper and friend of the Monday show, Wes Marshall, have a new show out called Look Both Ways with David and Wes. So check that out on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. I listened to episodes 1 and 3. Really good stuff. really interesting, and hopefully folks enjoy their take on things. So yeah, lots of urban planning, transportation, podcasts, YouTube channels, all that stuff. There's a lot of wealth of knowledge, and I really, really appreciate that. And as I've mentioned to other folks who have come on the show, have their own shows or whatever else, this is a space where we're all trying to like share the information and get people listening and understanding about what's going on in cities. And so, I don't harbor any ill will towards anybody who starts a new podcast. It's not a competition to me. It's actually, increasing the knowledge base. So I want to listen to those folks that bring out some new stuff. So to the city nerds out there and the folks listening to the War on Cars, folks listening to now Look Both Ways with David and Wes, I hope folks are just absorbing information so we can make our cities better. Really cool stuff. New podcasts, new shows, always coming out. Check it out if you get a chance. And thanks to everybody who's ordered Buster Bike scarves. I'm just sending one now to Edmonton, actually, in Canada. I would ask folks if they could to email me before you buy from Canada or from out of the country. I know that there's some folks I've sent to Australia and other places, but the freight and the postage is a little bit more to get out of the country. I don't think I'm hemmed in by tariffs, at least yet. It's individual items and stuff. Maybe it doesn't really matter to different countries. And I guess I'm not a microchips or anything like that. But email me before you purchase, and we'll talk about the details. So, but I'm more than happy to send them overseas and to the north and to the south and everywhere else. Everywhere needs bike and bus lanes for sure. Also, our bike-only knit scarves are back in stock, so check those out. Really cool stuff. And I've been saying this since the beginning of the year. I do want to work on a new design. I just haven't gotten to it yet. It's just stuff to do. So much stuff to do. Always an episode to write. Always an episode to produce. Always a newsletter to produce. An article to write. All that stuff. I'll get to it eventually, I hope. And if you want to support the show, you can do so by doing that on patreon.com/theoverheadwire. Thanks to our generous patrons who support this show and Talking Headways. Or you can buy the bookshop site. I always do that. You can always support the show by going to our store and searching and ordering any book you want. But also the books that we've of the authors that we've interviewed. I think there's almost 100 books there now that we've talked to folks, which is a lot of books. I'm just realizing 100 books is a lot of books, and we've done a lot of interviews over the years. So bookshop.org/shop/theoverheadwire. Or folks can order their Cars or Cholesterol t-shirts or merch if you go to TeePublic, bit.ly/cars or cholesterol. Thanks again, as always, to Richard Wazinski for designing that. You can find him on Dick David Sketches on Instagram. And we strongly suggest folks sign up for the newsletter. Obviously, you can go to theoverheadwire.com and find out all kinds of other stuff, including the Town Planning and Practice audiobook by Raymond Unwin. And thanks for listening, everybody. And now let's get to the show. Oh, wait, I got something else. Of course, as many of you know, and many of you are doing on Patreon, if you are a Patreon supporter, you can get these shows ad-free. So I know there's ads that come into your feed if you're on Apple Podcasts for other shows that may or may not be related to transportation and urban planning. There's also advertisements for the Talking Headways and Mondays at the Overhead Wire. There's usually 2 advertisements before and 2 advertisements after. Sometimes when I do some repeat shows, I might throw in an extra ad in the middle somewhere. But yeah, so actually, if you're a Patreon member, $1 a month or more, you can actually get the podcast ad-free. And no ads in your podcatcher, no ads in your earbuds, except for the one that I'm doing right now. If you become a Patreon member, you can support us that way, but also you'll get, and you sign up for the feed there, you'll actually get this podcast with no ads. So I appreciate that too. Okay, episode 177, we're live and in session. So 177 of the Monday show, 545 of the Talking Headway show. We're getting up there to 600, 700 something episodes. That's really good. We've been doing a lot of stuff, been talking a lot. I was thinking, what if I went back and did some listening and did threads about the old episodes, maybe some ideas of putting together some, listening sessions and share some of the knowledge that we've shared in the past. And I was thinking about how many episodes there are, 545 and 365 days in a year. And what if I did one a day, and it would take me a year to get through all of our episodes. So I appreciate those of you who are going back and listening to old episodes or listening straight through. It's harder now than it used to be, obviously, because we keep on adding shows. And also just, if you see the numbers on the shows, episode 545 or 546 or whatever, don't get discouraged by the number. You can jump in at any time and join us on the journey. So I really appreciate folks that go back and listen, but also people that are jumping on right now. Yeah, lots of episodes to go back and listen to. And the Talking Headways ones tend to be more evergreen, but you could get a kick out of the Monday shows as well. Before we get to the show, I want to let folks know that they can get this podcast and Talking Headways wherever you find a podcast, including iHeartRadio, Spotify, Overcast, Pocket Casts, and of course on Apple Podcasts. Thanks to everybody who subscribes through podcatchers. It's awesome that you keep coming back to the show. We really do appreciate it. And I know that you're here listening to this Monday show because it's in your podcatcher. Also, if you're so inclined, leave us a review on iTunes. We have some good feedback there, but it's been a few years since I've been soliciting them, but it would be great for folks to go and give it some reviews. Maybe I'll do a raffle or something soon for a scarf. Oh, and also, before I get to the news, at Spur, we are doing Trivia Night, Transit Trivia Night at Spur, and that is coming up soon. I believe it will be September 4th, Spur Trivia Night, 5:30. So if you're a Spur member or want to participate in Trivia Night, I am going to be the MC. Check it out. We will be at Spur on September 4th. So looking forward to that as well. I got some good questions for folks who are maybe if you know me and my brain, maybe you know the answers to these, but I want to go and name them off and then we'll find out. So yeah, Spur Trivia at the Urban Center, September 4th. Check it out if you get a chance. Okay, here are some of the stories that piqued our interest from the newsletter over the last few weeks. These items were popular in the Overhead Wire Daily, our daily newsletter that we've been doing for almost 20 years now. Sign up for it if you get a chance, theoverheadwire.com, and just put in your email. That's all you need to do a 2-week free trial. And that's lots of good stuff every day, news and information. But first up on today's Monday show, bipartisan housing bill. Senators Elizabeth Warren and Tim Scott have put together a federal housing bill that has bipartisan support even after major administration cuts to housing programs. If passed as is, the bill would change rules related to manufactured housing, ties block grants to future housing production, and increases investments in opportunity zones. It doesn't go into detail on how local red tape can be fixed, but I imagine that cities will be dealing with that. This was by Liz Goodwin and Rachel Siegel in the Washington Post. Yeah, bipartisan bill on housing. There's a lot of good stuff in here. Trying to change the rules on manufactured housing so they have to get, they don't have to have a trailer on them anymore. They don't have to have that frame on them anymore. Tying block grants to future housing production. So basically, they're not telling you how to fix the red tape. They're just saying, like, if you don't build more housing, we're not going to give you as many block grants. If you want more housing block grants, then you will build more housing and then prove it, and then we will give you more money. And that's the way that they're wanting to do this. And then also it increased the investments in opportunity zones like the most recent reconciliation bill has, which is one of the things that people have been surprised by from that reconciliation bill, which a whole lot of awful otherwise. So lots of low-income housing tax credits. You can debate on whether those are good ways to move forward, but in terms of housing, but that's what's in there now, and it's what we got. So we're working with it. But yeah, some good ideas in here. And so looking forward to seeing this maybe pass, and then, let's get to building housing. Next up, housing supply impacts low-income rental market the most. In cities that have recently added a large amount of housing, rents in lower-income neighborhoods have dropped the most, according to research from Pew, suggesting that new supply impacts housing costs at the lower end of the market. Looking at over 1,600 zip codes, they found that a 10% increase in housing supply was connected to a 5% less increase in rents. This was by Seva Rodnyansky and Dennis Su and Alex Horowitz in the Pew Trusts. Really interesting findings. So basically, if you increase your housing production, the supply was connected to a 5% less increase in rents in housing. I think one of the other things that I remember reading in here that they also found was that the impact is greater in the lowest income communities, and in the area with the cheapest housing stock has the most impact from new housing supply in terms of rent increases. So really interesting stuff in there, and really looking forward to seeing kind of some of the other research that are coming out. Pew Trust has been doing some really good stuff lately, so this is an interesting finding from them. Streets are shifting away from social uses. New research that used machine learning to look at how people use streets during William H. White's time versus 30 years later in 2010 has found that people use streets more as thoroughfares and linger less than they did previously. It is not known, however, what exactly is leading to the behavior changes, but the researchers suggest perhaps increases in incomes, more indoor spaces to congregate, and currently smartphone proliferation may be reasons why. This was by Fran Silverman at the Yale School of the Environment. So Carlo Ratti, who's been on the show before, basically, and him and his team and some folks at Yale and other places around the country and the world did some machine learning and basically looked at the videos from William H. White's time in the 70s and compared them to like video that was taken similarly from 2008 to 2010, which is not it's weird because they mention in their suggestions of what's going on smartphone proliferation, but smartphones actually didn't proliferate until after like 2009 when the iPhone came out. So it's kind of strange to me that the changes happen and then they suggest phones, because phones weren't there when they were doing the video analysis. So, but what I think it might be is, like they said otherwise, is that there's more indoor spaces, there's more coffee shops and stuff starting to pop up. There were more, places to go inside, and also, people are working, and work has been taking up a lot more of people's time. They just haven't had the time to linger, to hang out. And so I think that's part of the problem. We have this like environment in our country about working and working hard, and that's good, but you don't really have the same amount of time to do like all the stuff that people used to be able to do. You had a 9 to 5, and then you went bowling, or you went to social clubs, or you did all kinds of other stuff after work. And now people are just working all the time, and they have more time at work, and then they have, other, family obligations that they have to take care of, et cetera, et cetera. And so that might be one of the reasons why people are just like speeding up on their streets, not lingering anymore in those two time periods. So interesting findings, but I'm sure that some folks will, try to do something now with the time period, and compare to what's going on now, because it would be interesting to see what they were thinking of in like 2025 after the pandemic versus William H. White's time versus maybe 2010, which is when that data was used. So interesting, but some kind of holes in the, in the way that it comes out, and interesting to think about. MPOs rarely represent constituent makeup. Metropolitan planning organizations are tasked, among other things, with stewarding federal transportation money to regions from the federal government. Their boards, who wield decision-making power, are often made up of local elected or appointed officials, but many of those boards are not representative of their constituents, with cities often having less voting representation based on population than suburban jurisdictions. So this was by Yona Freemark and Lydia Lowe in the Urban Institute. I've been harping on this forever. I actually even asked Colin Perrin about this when we were talking about the policies related to permitting, whether more power should be going to the entities at the state level or at the MPO level. And MPOs, the problems that I see with them, and I asked Adi Tomer about this, when he was on the show, was that one of the problems I find with this is that the representation is all off. The suburban jurisdictions are representing cities, or representing the MPOs way more than cities are. The population density and the population total are a lot of it is in cities. And so a lot of these MPOs are representing suburban interests, and that has a problem for cities, at least from a percentage standpoint. So it would be interesting to think about how we could rejigger the boards to actually be more representative of the populations that they're supposed to be representing. And another thing that Yona and Lydia found out in their research was that, these MPO boards are also more proportionally homeowners. They're also more proportionally car drivers. And so that clouds their thinking as well, or influences their thinking. And so there's a lot more things to find out about what we need to do to organize MPOs to be more representative of cities and that they're in, but also the boards to be more understanding of the modes and the people who are living in their cities, who might be renters, who might be active transportation users, et cetera, because they're not really represented now. Disgust for density. New research from the University of British Columbia suggests that one reason why some people might harbor deep aversion to new housing density is that they are more psychologically prone to disgust. The findings suggest that common framing for or against progress might not account for hidden reasons why humans might be repelled by certain designs, but also nods to a path forward for finding common ground. This was by researcher Michael Hooper in NextCity. I mean, this makes sense. People are disgusted by certain things, but I think it's also like just this way that we've talked negatively about cities for a really long time. And so there's an element of disgust, and people might be disgusted by housing density, like Michael found in his research. But there's also just like a negative connotation from the press and others that have come from cities, and going all the way back to like the Bible and stuff. Like we go back in time and there's just negativity about cities and urban congregations for a really long time. And so I think that's seeped into people's consciousness, and maybe, part of that is disgust. Maybe their receptors for disgust are heightened by density and other things that the same they would be heightened for filth and for unsanitary conditions and stuff like that. But the research is interesting. I think it makes a point, and it's a good point to, see where people are coming from, of course, when we're having these discussions and these arguments. But, cities have been beaten up for a long time. And so some of the negativity and the NIMBYism might come from like kind of these preconceived notions in addition to the disgust. And disgust seems like it might be like a smaller percentage of things. But yeah, interesting research. I hope folks go and get a chance to read it. Something different to think about that we haven't really thought about before. Car colors are part of the urban heat island effect. New research shows that darkly colored cars contribute to the urban heat island effect, making the air around them 3.8 C warmer than nearby asphalt roads. Cars can cover up to 10% of a city, so vehicle colors can play a role in defining temperatures. Mitigation strategies could include restricting parking location for certain color vehicles and incorporating shade elements into parking. This was by CarbonCopy. So I think people understood this before. I mean, basically, if you have a bunch of black cars, they're really hot, and they're just going to soak in all the sun's energy versus a white car, which is going to reflect it. And so this is what they found. They found that the cars and the air around the cars are 3.8 C warmer than the asphalt. Asphalt's already dark. And so that's pretty amazing finding that the temperatures from cars themselves, the metal, actually increases the urban heat island effect. So there's definitely something we can do about that for sure, in terms of like whether we try to get people to get lighter color cars, or you have shade so that the cars don't actually absorb the energy. Maybe you have parking locations so that there's certain areas that are in the shade are getting the dark cars and certain areas are getting the lighter color cars. I don't know how that might work, but it's interesting to think about. Privatization of public engagement. Cartoonist Andy Singer of St. Paul, Minnesota, laments the increase in consultants conducting outreach for public agencies during urban and transportation planning. At a recent public event, he found that many of the people who were representing major transportation projects didn't know much about them. The writer suggests the arm's length approach to outreach is part of the larger trend of shrinking government and privatizing functions, which leads to worse project implementation and constituent frustration. This is by Andy Singer and streets.mn. Yeah, I mean, this is a whole part of that whole discussion that I had with Colin and I've had with Adi and others about basically capacity and capacity building and government capacity to do things. We've outsourced everything, but instead of, saving money and saving time, we've actually spending more money. We're spending more money giving it to consultants, giving it to folks who are doing the work for the government agencies instead of the government agencies doing the work themselves. And so I think that's part of the problem. And it's a really interesting observation by Andy that basically a lot of the folks that are doing public engagement are just trying to get people to like put some Post-it notes on a map or put sticky notes on a project type that they like or things like that versus, deeply engaging and understanding the project and understanding maybe where people are coming from and maybe being able to, understand it a little bit better. For my part, one of the first things I did when I was in grad school in terms of, thinking about projects or standing up in front of a community to present a project, I went to this really small town north of Fort Worth called Hazlitt. And one of the things that happened was they were trying to think about the future of TOD, and we, had some ideas about higher density and stuff like that and got yelled at a little bit. And I didn't really like getting yelled at. So, they're basically, it might be actually a mental health program too for some of these government workers who may be the best people to talk about a project, but they also don't want to get yelled at all the time. Maybe. Okay, here are some bonus items. The previous ones were the ones that were most read. These are the bonus items. These are the ones that I thought were interesting and maybe thought that folks would like to hear as well. After moving into hotels provided by King County, homeless residents in Seattle were found to visit the emergency room much less. The ability to have housing improved health and reduced recurring infections. This was in Seattle Times. And then these items also for the last, we had James on, so we didn't get to do as many articles and items and interesting things. So I put a couple in there from the 2 weeks before that as well. A fire at a battery-based energy storage facility in Moss Landing, California, has sparked opposition around the country to similar projects. The Moss Landing project has been found to be a technological outlier as safety standards increase since construction, but battery opponents have seized on the fire in places like New York City to generate national headlines in opposition. This was in Heatmap. So Moss Landing was a battery. Moss Landing is actually near Monterey and Santa Cruz, and one of the things that happened there was a big fire, and the battery backup that was there, and it was early for its kind. I mean, it was one of the first ones in the country, battery backup for solar panels and solar energy. It caught on fire and it created a really big health hazard. Basically all these particles, the same as wildfire smoke, went everywhere. And the problem with that is that the fire actually caused some problems, and they've been finding some of these heavy metals in the surrounding farmland and stuff like that. And so opposition to battery plants, and they don't want them to be in their communities, they've latched onto this as a reason why they shouldn't be built. And so more and more are getting built, but NIMBYs around the country are looking for ways to kill these battery plants. And the Moss Landing fire is one of their kind of go-to examples of why it shouldn't be built. So it's interesting to see that they're using it as a kind of an opposition metric to fight these battery plants that could store renewable energy. Research published in Nature Cities found that streetlights aren't the biggest cause of light pollution at night. Rather, private windows in people's houses make up 48% of total light sources, while streetlights are just 10 to 13%. This is in Forbes. Yeah, so we talk about light pollution at night. This research found that really it's the people's houses and the lights that come out of people's rooms rather than streetlights. Streetlights are actually often, they have a cone on top of them or whatever to shield them down, and so the light only goes to the ground mostly. But I guess windows are hard to cover up, or they leave their windows open, or the light gets out somehow, and so it actually creates the most light pollution. 48%, that's a lot. Okay, so next up I have a longer little piece here. Owen Hack suggests that we're making the same mistakes with smartphones that we did with automobile infrastructure. By requiring everyone to have a smartphone in order to order meals at a restaurant or to get access to services, we're tying people to a tool that once established is hard to get away from for our mental health and for our well-being. This is in NextCity. So basically what Owen is saying is that we are setting up phones to be the next cars, and we are super dependent on our cars. We require them to go everywhere. You require them to be a part of society. And now we're doing the same for phones. We're making it so that you have to have a phone to look at a menu at a restaurant. We have to have a phone to access public services and things like that. And so we really shouldn't be doing that. We really shouldn't be making it so that you only have to have you have to have a phone to be a member of society. And so I think that's frustrating to some folks, especially folks in the disabled community who maybe don't have access to a phone. Some folks who are worried about being super attached to the phones and the mental health issues that they cause. And so I think that's a really interesting observation and maybe something to pay attention to. A plan by the EPA to ditch the endangerment finding, which has helped regulate greenhouse gas emissions, could backfire, say experts in the field. Instead of ending regulations for polluters, they could allow states to make the rules stronger. This was in E&E News. So the EPA is getting rid of the endangerment, wants to get rid of the endangerment finding, which is what basically during the Obama administration, they found that, greenhouse gases endanger people through, the impacts that they have on the environment. And so it made them easier to regulate by the EPA. Now the EPA under Lee Zeldin wants to say, and Trump wants to say, no, that's not the case. And so we want to be able to pollute as much as possible. And we don't want you to stop it. So we're going to get rid of the endangerment finding, which has to be a court case. And so if they do get rid of it, which they want to do, it could open them up to actually bigger lawsuits because they could be found liable for pollution and for environmental impacts that are worse and tougher. So the states could actually enact stronger laws, perhaps if the EPA doesn't cut down on it. Obviously, this would be some states, not others, but it could make it worse for polluters if this actually happens, which is an interesting side effect. New Zealand's transport minister has indicated that the country will move to a road user charge and away from gasoline taxes. A distance charge currently exists but is low tech. Now vehicles will eventually pay electronically by weight and distance traveled. This was by Interest New Zealand. I think more countries are going to start thinking about this. There's been a discussion about this in Australia as well. The car drivers are not very happy about it. Old electric vehicle batteries are now being used outside of San Antonio for stabilizing the electric grid. Batteries acquired from Nissan Leaf vehicles will charge when there is abundant renewable energy such as solar and are still good to about 70 to 80% of capacity. This was in the Texas Tribune. Yeah, so basically there's a bunch of batteries that age out when you only get to 80% charge. The battery needs to be replaced in these vehicles. And what happens is that they're still good. They still have an 80% charge. So people can buy up them in bulk, the old batteries, and use them in these battery farms, basically. So you can store all this solar energy, you can store wind energy, renewable energy, all that stuff in these battery packs that are not able to be used for cars anymore, but you can use them as recharge. So I think that's really interesting. And I think that as this happens more and as we figure out how to recycle batteries more, use the lithium and all the other rare earth metals that are in batteries, use it to recycle, I think we'll be able to find that there's a lot of battery or material out there to make new batteries. In an attempt to compete with the Chinese electric vehicle manufacturer, Ford Motor Company is rethinking the assembly line made famous by the Model T. Ford predicts that the new process will reduce electric vehicle costs and speed up the process by 40%. This is what they say in Wired magazine. It's interesting, if they can totally revamp the assembly line in a different way. They want to do it not like it's a line where it goes through like the original. You see the videos of Henry Ford and the creation of the assembly line on the History Channel or whatever. It's basically one big line, and the cars kind of go through the line and get parts put on them as they go through. This is totally different. You make the car in 3 parts, basically is what they're saying. You make it in 3 different parts, and then you put them together at the end, and it actually might be much faster. I don't know because they haven't put it together yet. I'm sure they've mocked it up, and I'm sure they've figured it out how much faster it could be for people to put in these pieces in these 3 different sections. But it's interesting. I mean, if you're going to try to make cars, want people to drive electric cars, and you want to compete with the Chinese firms who are selling these BYD and stuff that are selling vehicles for under $10,000, you're going to have to start doing something. And they think that they can get it down to 30,000. I think batteries, with the sodium batteries that are coming out and stuff, that you can figure out ways to start reducing costs. If we had started doing this like 30, 40 years ago, I bet you we'd have super cheap EVs nowadays because of the ability of us to innovate. But we just started doing it recently more and more for cars. And so as soon as people put their minds to it, they'll start to innovate and find new ways of doing things. So, there's going to be more money in it now, and so there's going to be more innovation likely. And so I expect they'll figure something out, and we'll have more electric vehicles. Whether that's a good thing or not is to be determined. Electric vehicles are better than gas vehicles, but also it's still, there's still 4-door, 4-wheel vehicles in this world, and usually they're SUVs and bigger. So in cities, that's a problem. In other areas, maybe not. But I'm interested to see kind of what happens with this and how American companies compete. And then finally, researchers tracked 5,500 Americans that moved to cities from 2013 to 2016 and found that moving to a walkable city from a non-walkable city increased step counts by an average of 1,100 steps per day. This was in ABC News. So this is something that's similar to a finding that we made when I was working at the Reconnecting America in the Center for TOD. We worked with CNT on a project looking at every single transit station in the United States, and the VMT profiles of these stations basically allowed, basically what we found is that if you move into a station area that has a low VMT profile already, you're more likely to adopt that low VMT profile. If you're moving to a commuter rail station on the outskirts, which has a high VMT profile, you're likely to follow that high VMT profile. And so it makes sense that if you're going to go to a walking city, you're more likely to walk. As soon as I moved to San Francisco from the East Bay, I walked a lot more, and I'm walking a lot more to do stuff now because I live in a 15-minute city type neighborhood to where I can go to the grocery store, to the drugstore, to whatever else. There's an ice cream shop on the corner, etc. This makes sense, and it tracks, and now we just need to build more walkable cities so more people can walk. All right, this week and every week I want to thank our generous Patreon supporters. You guys are awesome and keep the show going by listening and supporting each month. This show and Talking Headways really wouldn't be here without you, so thank you very much. And you can support the show by going to patreon.com/theoverheadwire. We've had people sign up over the last few months. We're super appreciative of that. $2 a month will get you some stickers and a handwritten note. $10 a month will get you one of our scarves. Also, I want to mention that we did produce an audiobook version of Raymond Unwin's 1909 classic, Town Planning and Practice. If you want to get your hands on one, go to theoverheadwire.com or raymondunwin.com. Some really cool artwork there that was done for us for that project. Listener questions and comments. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to email us at theoverheadwire@gmail.com or message us on any of the social sites where the podcast appears. And thank you all for writing on LinkedIn, on Patreon, because we've been posting posts on Patreon and podcasts as well. Thanks everybody who's been posting on Blue Sky and others places. Really appreciate that too. And says, hey Jeff. Oh, I have something from Cliff Barger. Hey Jeff, not sure if you ever had the opportunity to run indoors at BU, but the section of the Green Line that runs by their track is notoriously slow. I think there have been a few instances of people racing the light rail along Com Ave. And he sends an article from Streetsbog, Massachusetts. Yeah, so he's referencing basically James and my discussion about racing the folks in Seattle who race the 8 bus. Also, whether you can get a track team to run against a bus line and see if they can beat it because it's in traffic and whether we can make some improvements. So yeah, that's interesting. I'm sure that there's plenty of places around the country where people can beat the bus lines because they're stuck in traffic. But this is a new one. If folks have thoughts on where they can beat their bus, and either walking or running, let me know. Send us an email, theoverheadwire@gmail.com. And Cliff, I think, posted this on Patreon, so appreciate that, Cliff. Also, thanks to everybody who left nice notes after the podcast with Colin Parent and others. Lots of people got some inspiration out of it, whether it's from the catchy report title, The Powerless Brokers, or it helped their advocacy in some ways. I heard from somebody who said that it's helping their advocacy because they're figuring out that it's not just transit that's having this problem with permitting, it's other industries as well, whether that's aviation or what have you. And so I really appreciate that people send me notes saying how the podcast helps them, because that's why we do this, is to try to help people learn new things and use it in their advocacy every single day. If you have any other questions, shoot them again to theoverheadwire@gmail.com. Finally, puppies and butterflies. This is part of the show we talk about something fun, interesting, or maybe just didn't fit in other sections. Yeah, I think I wrote something down for this last night and then I took it down. Yeah, I've just been, we haven't been watching a lot of TV. Just been hanging out with my daughter and playing. One thing, I'm thinking about like childcare and stuff lately, and the location of childcare. And my daughter's about to move schools to a different location, which isn't super far away. But then instead of being able to walk, you do have to take a transit line, and it's not really far, but it's also kind of annoying. And the frequencies are frustrating to that, right? If I can walk to the daycare or the preschool, it's really easy. I just walk. I don't have to worry about schedules. I don't have to worry about times. It's basically as good as owning a car to get out, and car can go anywhere, anytime, if the roads allow, of course. But it gives you that freedom. And then I love taking transit in San Francisco. I do. I don't own a car, so that's how we do most of our stuff, unless we borrow a car from a friend. But yeah, this just makes it a little harder, and the location of it is a little bit tougher. And so it makes me think of like where we locate stuff, and like what the decisions are and why the decisions are made to do such things, why people decide to like move all the kids from one school to another school that might not be as accessible. Also, it's not on as fun a street. Maybe it's not on as fun a street. And so that's something that I've been thinking about, is like the access to things. Like, do you all have problems accessing healthcare? Do you have to drive to health or childcare or whatever else? Just something that I've been thinking about. Anyways, it's not really a puppies and butterfly, I guess. If I do have a puppies and butterfly, again, it'll be that we're going to be at Spur and we're going to be doing the trivia night. So that's really exciting. I mentioned that earlier in the show, but I'm going to mention it again. I believe it's September 4th, Thursday, September 4th. We're going to be at Spur doing trivia night. That's a puppies and butterflies for sure. Okay, now you can find me on Blue Sky, Mastodon, LinkedIn, Instagram, sometimes Threads, Substack, YouTube, and of course on my website, theoverheadwire.com, or in your inbox every morning if you sign up for the newsletter. And I'm on Flickr at Transit Nerds. Everything else is at The Overhead Wire. I'm going to try, I know folks have been asking me to try to put up some more of my China pictures on the on the Flickr site. I will try. Like I said, it's hard to get stuff done. It's just me and Sophia, my wonderful editor for Talking Headways, but it's just me most of the time doing all this stuff. So I will try. Thanks again for joining us at Mondays at The Overhead Wire. Thanks to our generous Patreons for sponsoring this week's podcast, every week's podcast. Thank you all for listening. I really appreciate it. It really makes me happy. And we'll see you next time.
Talk